What's up, guys? I figured I don't have too much on my mind, hey, let me make a video for this exact reason. But I just kind of wanted to come back on here and see if we can look at some levels on a few different stocks for today. Maybe some things that I'll be watching, some things I got into yesterday, maybe I'll be getting out of, so on and so forth. Obviously, we can start with Bitcoin right now, just for the hell of it. One thing that we can see is that eventually, we finally broke down from this ascending broadening wedge, which I believe that the target is from the highest point of the wedge to the bottom. Well, actually, I think you do it kind of like this. I think you're supposed to measure it on the outside from what I was kind of looking. So you go from the highest point to the low, and then you bring that over, you put the target down. So the target brings you pretty much to 21K. I have 20,800, and then also we could come as low as here as well, because this was the last wick before the run. So usually that's a good thing to do, but it could make a higher low and then bounce, because I've seen that before where it's not exactly perfectly flat and then it bounces up if this thing does want to continue down. Right now it's probably hanging on. It's not even quite at the support yet. The first support is this 21, probably 100, because that was where a candle buddy closed, and then this here as well, 21.4. But I think overall we'll be coming down to this area. I'm not going to do too much on Bitcoin right now, but basically it just keeps making continuation patterns the whole way down. Now it kind of it's trying to make a little, I don't know if you want to call it a triple bottom or not, but you could almost just put a flat support right here and say, if this falls below 21,681 and starts closing candle bodies, rejecting on it, then you could be looking for another downside. And if this ends up being a bearish pennant, you can take it from the point of the breakdown of the last breakdown to there, and then go like this, and that gives us a target of 20,715, assuming this continues down. And then on the upside, say this thing does decide, hey, I want to rally back up, and the stock market decides it's going to rally up, and then we'd be looking to retest this 22,875 as a potential resistance, as well as 22,300, I think, maybe 500. Let me just look. Yeah, that was roughly a support right here. We can see that the candle body, we would wick to 22.3, so that'll be an area, 22,285. But we would always buy back up to this yellow trend line I placed every time. So it'll be somewhere, there'll be confluence somewhere between 22.3 and 22.5 if we do decide to come back up. The only way that you would probably, the way we would be able to figure that out would be, say this thing decides to roll over, which I think is more likely. But if this thing decides to come back up here, then we'd want to put a trend line. And these are all just temporary. I always end up moving these later because they only have confluence for the pattern right now. But you look at these candle bodies right here and draw a line, 21.9 pretty much. So if we can get above 21.9 and start closing candle bodies above, get back above 22K really is probably the key. Find support on 22K again, then you'd be looking at potentially going back up and retesting the previous support and maybe flipping it to new resistance before moving down. But it's most likely right now in this pattern that it's going to go down. So anyway, we'll look at SPY real quick in the NASDAQ. SPY, this is something that I actually ended up doing. So we were talking in my last video how I was kind of I don't know if I want to start buying stocks, but we did end up bouncing here. Then we got rejected. We came back down. Now that's when I started thinking, as we're turning down, was that yesterday? The 9th. Yeah. Well, as we're coming down, we bounced again, and I was like, all right, this looks pretty good that we bounced again at the same support. But now we're not getting any follow through at this point, right? We're just making another spinning top. And I'm like, that's not good, because now we have something going on here where we have lower high, lower high, lower high. So as I'm zooming in here and I'm kind of watching it on the 15-minute and the 5-minute and everything like that, mostly I was in this range here, and I'm like, what's going on with the SPY? So I'm looking down here on the 1 minute, 5 minute, just kind of watching the price action, and I'm like, man, it was just doing this right now, and it was kind of looking like it was trying to make a W, but I'm like, it doesn't really look that good. If you put the EMAs on and everything like that, it was like trending underneath this, then we got on top, and I ended up actually putting a short in at 413.43 was where I added in. So I got a May 3rd, well, it was like a, it was a March 3rd, sorry, I can't even remember what it was. Shit. I don't know, it was a March 3rd contract, I can't remember what it was. I know it cost me $680, and end of the day, it was worth $1,147. So it was a nice, almost a double so far. And then I just pretty much played this all the way down. And the way that I managed to stay in this, because, I flipped over at one point and I'm like, damn, it's holding that support again. Like, maybe this thing wants to rally. And I was like, let me go check the VIX, because the VIX volatility index is going to tell us something. And as you see, I probably was charting this thing the whole way, because I was watching it when it was right here. Oh yeah, right here. So we had this breakout again of this. This is going to be something to watch today as well. It's probably going to be really helpful to watch, because it was really helpful for me yesterday. But you could see massive falling wedge. The other day when we had a little sell-off, we had a fake breakout, and we got a lot of resistance on this 29. Came back in. Then we ended up breaking out. So I noticed it was breaking out because I decided to look at it. Went down to the 1 minute, and I was like, whoa, it actually broke out right here. So I'm like, and then it started getting rejected, and this is when SPY was at that support. So I'm watching it, and I'm like, man, if this thing comes back and it back tests this line and starts getting momentum and then breaks this old high here at 1964, this might be scary for for some stocks. Well, what did we do? We bounced right off it, and we broke this high, and I'm like, oh shit. Then we started making, and another thing I was watching as well, just to help, I was looking at the EMAs. So I was just kind of watching it. So we started trending up, then it was coming back down again. SPY started rallying, and I'm like, oh man. So this might end up being a head and shoulders pattern, was my first thought, because you got, a little left shoulder. This is all in a 1 minute, so you got to take it with a grain of salt here, right? We had a head and shoulders. Then it spikes, and I'm like, oh man, maybe it's going to make that shoulder. I was like, well, if it breaks through this, and then it back tests that trend line and starts getting resistance on it, because you can't just rush into stuff on a 1 minute. It's going to take time. If this thing could come down, then it could spike back up, and you're like, whoa, I shorted it. If it came down, then it started chopping here, and then it started breaking down, that would have been my signal. All right, maybe I should go long on SPY, right? But we had this come on, boom, we didn't even touch the trend line, and then we just fucking rallied, and I'm like, all right, well, this is a head and shoulders pattern, and if it stopped here, then obviously we could have said maybe if it stopped there again and then went down, it would make a right shoulder, but it just fucking rallied, and I'm like, oh man, my short's gonna be printing. And then we hit a resistance, which was the 29, which basically the $20.09 was off of all of this price action here. This is the last area we got rejected. So I was watching that as well, and I'm like, man, if this thing breaks that, if that breaks through the top and it confirms this support, this is going to be something. So, we hit here, we rejected, and we started building what I ended up drawing in as an ascending triangle, which is a bullish pattern. And obviously you have a bullish move into it, so it's more likely that you end up getting that breakout. Then we broke out, and we kind of chopped around here, and I'm like, man, maybe it's going to roll back and back test it. This thing just fucking rips again, and then it bounced again, so then I'm like, all right, let me find the support. We have a touch here, touch here, touch here. So I drew that in, like when we were about here, pulled it all the way across. It gave me a little bit of an idea. And then it fucking bounced right off there. It rallied, so my shorts are printing. Then we started breaking it a little bit, as you see. And, but what did we do when we broke it was we kept holding. Well, obviously we broke below the 50. If we would have back tested this red 50 EMA, that could have said, all right, shorts might be good. We stayed on it. And we just continued the rally pretty much freaking well, since close. It's just been going. So now you can almost look at this and say, hey, is this thing making a head and shoulders pattern now? Maybe. It's still holding the 50. It's just coming back down to the 50. Now you have potentially a new support. So this thing could break the 50, come down, bounce off this and rally, or it could end up breaking it and coming back down to some previous price action, which could be down at this 2140. Something else I was watching was the 4 hour, which we ended up, I thought we were going to get resistance here. It closed like here at the end of the day, 21. Oh yeah, it's been ripping all fucking night long. So yeah, you're getting a little bit of a pullback, but as you get the pullbacks, you'll see SPY will be bouncing, so on and so forth, or the markets in general. So this is going to be a great thing to watch today. What you'd probably really want to see as of now, this green line is the 200. Since the breakout, we have not lost the 200. If we lost the 200 and we didn't manage to get back up, like say this thing decides that it's going to come down here and it gets below the 200 and it keeps rejecting on it, that'll kind of be something to watch. But it's a 1 minute, so you got always have to take it with a grain of salt. But yeah, for now, this thing is just still going. And looking at like how high could this thing go, I mean, there's plenty of ways that you can kind of get like an idea of it. Overall, if you look at the daily, the 100 EMA, we're at the 50, 2108. That's what we're above right now. The next resistance is 2431, and then the 200 is 25. So if it does want to continue rallying, sometimes this thing does end up having some big ass moves. So that'll be something to watch. But I'll be watching it today. I mean, I'm not sitting here trying to do analysis on the VIX, even though to me it's important because obviously this is going to tell us potentially when we're going to bottom for the day. Doesn't have to be bottom forever, just bottom for the day. And if you're a short-term trader like me, you'll be in and out of trades. But maybe 2363, we could find some pretty good resistance, which is an old top area. And then overall, a target of the falling wedge is the top of the wedge, which is 2575. So, I know this is probably like, you guys are either like, I don't want to be watching this because I don't care about the VIX, but you might want to look at the VIX. So let's look at a couple other things real quick. Apple was making this descending triangle here, a flat support. Well, it's not even really a descending triangle. I just put based off of where we had closed. But what you can see is we broke the 50 on the hourly, which is not good. 21's coming down, which can pretty much signal a move. When it's the opposite way, if you have a yellow coming up underneath and then the 50's over you and price action is trading here, that could be signaling a big fucking move up. Because as the 21, the shorter moving average comes up, you're going to launch the stock. Well, the same thing goes with the other direction. So that's something that could help you. Doesn't always work, but it's something that could give you like an idea if we're going to see a big move. And this was an area right here showing that this could be a big move, because as this comes up, as soon as you lose that 50, that's it. So you're losing the 50 now. So that's, if you like to do moving averages, sometimes I'll use them just for that reason. Like if I see a good pattern playing out, I'm like, let me see what the moving averages look like. We could draw this in like that, but usually you get 3 touch points on a support. And this wasn't really 3 touch points. There's only 2 and then a break. So if it ends up being a fake breakout, yeah, I don't really like drawing it that way either. So, that's why I was kind of drawing it in as a descending triangle. But however way we draw it, we could go off of candle bodies, and that'll just kind of give us everything we need. So 151.76 is going to be a pretty key area for Apple, somewhere, probably about there, because you can see this had the most candle bodies here trying to close. Every wick would come down to about 151.16, so that might have confluence, and then it'll buy back up. So if we end up catching resistance on this, if we do get a bounce, which right now we're kind of like bouncing, it looks like a little bit on Apple, but we're way down here now. So could we rally back up and get resistance here? Maybe. And then we could also keep an eye on this, which I didn't draw it in that well, but you would kind of, it's not that good. Well, you know what we might want to do is pull this all the way down like that and see what we can do. And then maybe Apple ends up finding support down here at these wicks, or this, this one was down at 147.77. This one's at 148.80. And then if we find support here, we might buy back up and either hit the yellow line or hit the white line. White trend line's 152.34. That wouldn't be too bad. But yeah, that's just kind of what I'll be watching for Apple. It's overall, it still looks pretty good, right? But it did just break the 50. But it's done it before. It broke the 50 down here, and then it ended up rallying. So you have the 100 down here at like 146.90 if that decides to go that far down. It's kind of a lot of chop range, but 146.80 is pretty damn good. That's not a bad spot to look for a potential bounce in the coming days. But yeah, I mean, if you want to put this trend line all the way up here too, that's obviously going to say like, whoa, we have a long way to go down, because this is an area that it got rejected here and then it dropped all the way down. Got rejected back at that yellow line, dropped all the way down. And now it just got rejected again at the yellow line. But this is a little bit more bullish looking pattern than this. This was like some ugly ass shit. You know what I mean? But, you know, then again, this was kind of decent looking, but it still made a lower high. So at this point, we've came up higher than this range a little bit. So that's not too bad. You know, this thing could just end up turning into, overall, right? We're just talking about short term, but this thing could just end up turning into something like that. And it ends up just going like this. Comes down here, bounces back up, comes down here. And everyone thinks it's in a bearish pattern, but boom, rips to the upside, and then it rockets to the level that I'm looking for eventually, which is 170. So, you know, this is short-term stuff, but I would just watch and see how this is going to play out. Maybe we have support if we draw this like this and ignore the 50, and we pull this like that. Now you have one touch point, two touch points. Maybe you're coming for your third touch point, which is aligning with the 100. Well, that's actually roughly close to where we are. This will be something I'll be watching. It's right in the 100 on the hourly, 147.50, 147.40, somewhere around there. And if we end up getting there and then we end up, you know, finding some support, we might be able to see a nice rally back up. That'll be a nice thing to watch on Apple as well. AMD was something I was just slowly watching because I was looking at kind of the same thing. This looked like it could have held support, but we ended up losing this 82.58. Same thing with AMD. Let's find the support. This is always a smart thing to do, right? If there's a trend, a noticeable trend, you want to mark that out, because that's going to give you potentially a good place to buy. This would actually break the 100 if it did come down to here. That's about 78.58. I like 79.30. That's my key area if we do come down there. That was an area we had almost this triple top. This was been a lot of resistance. We double bottomed, we rejected there, then we ripped through it. We caught resistance roughly around that 78, 75 to 79. So yeah, that's going to be a key area. That also could confirm potentially a double bottom pattern if that's the neckline of the W right here at the 79 to 80. And we're at 81.87. So that'll be something to watch for today as well. We could keep selling off for a bit, but now that we're dropped below, the first thing that I'd probably look for would be a bounce back up to this 82.60, and then maybe a rejection there, and then kind of look for the support below if you want to pull some shorts off for the day. There's probably going to be a lot of shorting opportunities, but you got to remember that stuff's going to rally up to the previous supports. So you got to find those supports first on things, and then think about where am I going to short, and think about where am I going to take my profit, because it doesn't have to be a short that you're going to like short this thing down to $60 or something. You could just do a day trade on it. And that's what I've been doing, really. I mean, I've been trying to do a day trade, maybe a 2-day swing, something like that. That's what I'm doing on SPY. I still have my position open, and I actually shorted Tesla as well. That'll be probably the last thing that I end up looking at, because last video we were talking about Tesla and how it could break out of that pattern, and we ended up breaking down. So I ended up noticing some squeezing going on with those EMAs, but this was on a 5-minute, but still. I saw these squeezing going on with the EMA, 50 below, yellow above. And I ended up getting I got a short in over here. I took my short like probably around 213-ish. So that was nice. I think I got it in like this rally. I was like, maybe we can get a double top. We didn't even come up and make a higher high. So I started getting my shorts in probably around here. So that was very good. And I didn't end up closing it yet. So I'm kind of waiting to see. I'm kind of looking for Tesla potentially to come down to either 200, 202, which we're at right now, and hold, or 197. Those are my three kind of like support areas, because we had a previous breakout, and I think we were talking about this. Oh yeah, we were talking about this breakout, And then we also have the 201.70 is the 0.5 fib. And then the 198.88 is the 0.618. So those will be some fib levels to watch. This was the pattern we were talking about in my last video, how I was expecting a breakout, and we ended up breaking above that 197.25. Now, we don't know if we need to come back and back test it. We might not have to. You know, but it's possible that we come down to this well, we're at 204. We come down at least to this 202.76, which was some wick areas here. And then we have the 201.70, which is the 0.5 fib. So that's something to watch for like maybe a bounce play on Tesla. I'm going to be closing my shorts like I have on Tesla probably. And if it ends up being the wrong idea, I mean, I can always get back in a short if we break some of that support. But I'm kind of thinking Tesla's been really strong, and it's not the smartest thing to be in a short. I grabbed a good short, but that doesn't mean I'm going to hold it down to the bottom or something. And then, you know, this was one I was really looking at was, I made it in my last video with the Silvergate. Well, let's see. The next day after I made that video, we rallied up to 19, like above 1920. I was talking about getting 1920s. And if you look at this, this was a nice short-term trade, but if anybody tried to come in and wait for this 1725, obviously you'd have to you would have got in and then stopped out right away. But I was making the video around this point here, and price was about 18, and we rallied all the way up here. I screwed up, did not sell it. My emotions took over. I was like, maybe this can go higher. Even though I talked about in the video, we could come up to 1919 and I'd probably sell it. See, sometimes you get screwed up even when you know what you're doing, or, you know, emotions are always going to take the best of us. So I didn't sell it. So then it started dumping, and I'm like, oh, it looks bad. It looks really bad. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to put a short in on this. So I bought a couple puts on it, and I did 1550 puts. And I was like, maybe I can get a rip back up here, retest this, and then I can get out. Well, it never gave me that, so I ended up getting stopped out at my stop loss. Well, I think I closed it in the morning yesterday at it was at like 17:30, and I just sold it because 5 pennies per share is all I got. And I was like, fuck it, this thing's not going to do anything. I started looking at the moving averages all crossing down. I'm like, I wasn't looking at the moving averages when I was making this idea. It was basically, the idea was this is a big ascending triangle potentially, and we're trying to flip it to support. Well, nope. Didn't happen. So hopefully nobody got hurt too bad. Hopefully you guys used your stop losses if you did watch that video and decided to buy in at 1725. I didn't even want to buy at 1725 anymore because of how badly this bounced. Last time, the second we touched this area of 1725, we ripped right the fuck up. This time, oh, we did nothing. We just rejected on the 21 and we just went sideways. I'm like, that's weak. So that's kind of how I knew, like, all right, I got to short this thing. And I shorted it, and then I closed it. It's lower now, but I closed it around like 15, not even 1550, but I made about, 90 something bucks off of my 2 contracts that I got. Nothing too crazy. I closed it probably right here. And I saw like some bullish divergence and everything. I knew it was going to continue down. Like I had a pretty strong feeling, but I also was like, maybe it could come back up and retest. Never happened, but now it's just going down. So maybe Silvergate comes down. It's sitting on the 200 on the hourly right now, just below it at $15. And then you have support down here at 14.17, and then it could come all the way back to the lows. So I'm not even going to look at this now, unfortunately. And then Rivian, I did end up selling it at the 2020, though. I did talk about that one in the video. This one could still have that room up. It is testing that support. 100 EMA is right around that, where we are right now, roughly 19. And if we came down to 1807, that's the 200 on the hourly. And then I was talking about the 0.5 fib at 1871. Maybe that still can hold and we still rally and continue up. I mean, this could still be the uptrend overall. But I started selling it because we just couldn't close above that 2020 that I was talking about. And then I started noticing the market was all not looking too good. So I ended up selling it probably around somewhere on this rejection of this 21 I was on the smaller time frames, of course. But anyway, this video is long enough and I got to get to work. So if you guys want me to look at any stocks, let me know. Peace.